I have to start from apologies because due to very unfortunate series of events, you are seeing this talk before Simon actually got a chance to introduce you to the concept of Wardley Mapping, and I assume that many of you have no idea what Wardley maps are about. Therefore, I need to ask you for a little bit of patience. I've changed my presentation overnight to make it digestible. It won't be easy, but I hope it will be okay. I'm going to talk about what does it mean to lead when you think you are doing everything right and you are not getting results. And before we even get into that, we need to think about what does it actually mean to lead, because majority of people confuse leadership with actually being in charge or in power over other people and telling them what to do. From my perspective, or from my work with many customers, what I have realized that you actually lead when people think that you are not making mistakes. And they look at you and they see a person who is right most of the time, and therefore they seize their decisions or they hand you decisions over their life or projects. Therefore, it's time for you to do a little bit of assessment. Are you surprised by results of your actions? Do you actually get what you think you will get in the organization by the work that you are doing? And by the way, I had a chat with some of you during my workshops and yesterday in the evening, and it turns out that many of you are working really, really hard, but you are not appreciated enough for the work that you are doing. You haven't heard about Wardley Mapping probably before. This is a very nice invention by Simon. Simon, can you stand up so everyone sees you? Yeah. And Wardley Mapping helps you visualize your environment and build a common understanding of what's going on in your company. Therefore, if you can visualize what's going on in the company, you are not supposed to make many mistakes. But that's just the beginning, because as you will learn, if you go through this process, the map is not the territory. You will know what is right for the company, and you will still fail to execute those things because the organization can respond in very unpredictable ways. To put it in a slightly different way, how I see the role of a Scrum Master or of an Agile coach or generally a person who is responsible for delivery of software is that you sit in the Wardley doctrine, you sit in this place where you are responsible for the best practices of delivering value to your organization. But those are best practices and they depend on the situation around your company and what is changing, and on the actual leadership decisions, and most importantly, they depend on the value that your organization is supposed to deliver. And this is the question of why of purpose and why of movement. And one of my colleagues in the previous organization used to use the term that if you work too hard here, it's a great landing, but wrong airport. So I'm not going to talk about the basics of mapping, how to create a map, how to test it, how to verify it with multiple stakeholders. We will still go into the juicy stuff, which is like what will make your job difficult. And those are things that you would expect to see, but unfortunately, not many people talk about it. Those are egos, those are bonuses or KPIs. There is finger pointing and there is the lack of trust. And all of those things, they do exist in every organization, but unfortunately, we don't talk about them enough. But before we get there, I'm going to use Wardley Mapping to illustrate many of those examples, and therefore I need to give you a very quick introduction to the core concept of Wardley Mapping. It will not take me more than 3 minutes, and this concept is called evolution. I do honestly hope that you do believe in evolution, and we have no other opinions here. But in Wardley Mapping, evolution are 4 critical terms. The first one is genesis, And it means that you are doing something for the first time in the entire world, or that you have invented something completely new, and because it's completely new, it has no market value. As an example, Simon often gives the Persian battery, which is a couple of thousand years old. We know that ancient people were capable of generating electricity, but what for? They had no bulbs. Right? Then, depending on how do you look at the humanity, whether you believe that people want to get richer or whether they want to drive progress, somebody will look at this experiment and will create a custom-built solution. Custom-built solution is built like for the real business usage. It starts generating value, but because nobody did it before, it can fail, right? You are experimenting, you are looking for a use case. Then we've got a product, which means somebody looked at multiple custom-built solutions and created a definition around it. And because there is a definition, you can start marketing it, you can start building in large quantities, you can achieve some repeatability, and the risk of embracing it is quite easier. And finally, there is the commodity phase, which means that something is so common and so boring that we don't want to think about it unless it doesn't break. So that's the only concept that we need to get into the ego stuff, and this will be a real use case, actually my first use case that I have solved with Wardley Mapping. Imagine this, you run a venture capital fund. You take money from your investors and invest them in startups. And you need to tell them twice a year how well you are doing. Therefore, you need to get reports from all of the startups. You need to compile one big fat report and send it to your investors and say that you are doing great. Now, there is an issue because it involves a lot of manual work. It could be automated. There is a product in the market which does that, but unfortunately no longer available because it was a boxed version which you had installed on your own server, and now cloud is popular. And you've got a few options to improve the report generation. Option one, you want to build a solution in-house, meaning the budget of IT will go up because they will need to hire more developers. The other one is you can pay the leading solution provider to build a new tool in the cloud. They actually run a preview program. The third one is do absolutely nothing, because we know that every process can be automated with the sufficient number of interns. And finally, you can buy a secondary solution, an inferior solution, buggy, not quite, let's say, buggy, not quite predictable, but will do the job from a secondary provider. Assuming that the cost of all of those things is similar, how many of you believe that option one is the right way to go? Okay, a few of you. How many of you would go for the second option? Okay. For the third one? Oh, so you think like me, because that was my assumption. And for the fourth one? Secondary? Oh, okay, so it's more or less equal version. And now I will show you what happened when we try to map it. Right? So this is the evolution axis that you have just learned how to use. And what we've got the IT department, which has to deal with the standardization process, which is custom, because there are many interns doing it from scratch each time and making many mistakes. And there are individual reports which are also custom, because each startup is doing reporting in a different way. And they want to move the standardization process to the commodity space, basically make it disappear and make it not to be a concern anymore. Then we started talking to analysts, and analysts told us that they actually would like the process to be standardized because making reports is easier. But as you can see, we haven't arrived to a customer yet, so we go up into the value chain to understand what's really going on, and we got to the customers who wanted to see growth, who needed to invest money, and then there were some performance reports delivered. And it gives you absolutely no clue what to do in this situation, which options to choose. And it turned out that luckily we've got a marketing person in the room And the person in the room said something which, like, I mean, I still remember and I still feel a little bit anxious about it, because they said that customers don't want to see return on investment in the first place. They want to see that you are a trustworthy partner. They can invest at loss, but they will not invest if they don't trust you. Now, this changes the equation, because the moment you start talking about trust, the question is, how do you show that you are a trustworthy partner? And we are getting into requirements which they have never thought about, such as auditability. You need to show the connection between individual reports and final numbers. That's not an easy thing to build in the existing system or in Excel with interns. You may use benchmark data which are not available inside the company, which rules out doing nothing or working with interns or building the system inside. And actually, the marketing person said that they want a kind of an inside campaign, so they want a trusted vendor and show the logo of a trusted vendor near their company, let's say near their company logo. So that was like the aha moment, but why they haven't figured it out earlier? I mean, the person was there in the room, the person knew the answer, but nobody asked that particular marketing person what our customers want. And to my, let's say, surprise, what I have learned, IT didn't value marketing. This is one of the most difficult ego issues that you may find in the organization. When one department doesn't like another department, so they don't ask or don't consult them for opinions. And I'm guilty of that, right? Because I'm a computer scientist and I have been very proud of my analytical skills. And then I have figured out that people have something to say too. And it took me a bit too much time, right? Another thing, again, it will be explained with map, are bonuses. I don't know how many of you, but discussing bonuses is usually a taboo in the organization, because not everyone wants to share how much they are getting or how much they can earn. And even more than that, if you know what is the way, if you know what is the compensation structure of an individual, you may use it against them. So people don't discuss bonuses. But how does it play in real organizations? Imagine another case study, which is like medical insurance. And they have two types of customers, individual and corporate. Individuals pay for themselves, buy insurance directly. Corporate customers buy insurance in batch for all of their employees. Now, corporate customers have an old portal, but it does work. And the individual have an old web page, which frankly is a little bit of shame to the organization, but it kind of works. Now there is a disruptor coming to the market and offering a mobile application through which you can buy insurance. I mean, it was a few years ago. Or you can book a visit to your doctor and it works flawlessly. And this player, this disruptor, offers this big medical insurance company a partnership. Should you take the offer? The options are: try to compete with this disruptor, partner with them, ignore the individual market, focus on corporations, or do nothing, or something else. So how many of you believe in building your own application to fight the market disruptor? Some of you, yeah, I can see some enthusiasm. Do you work in mobile app development? Kind of. How many of you would partner with the disruptor? Many of you. Okay. How many of you would double down on one leg of this business? I can't see anyone. I will not be asking about doing nothing or other stuff. Let's move on to the map, because this is where you can understand the situation. So we've got the individual value chain. Basically, people want to be healthy. They need some sort of the insurance. They need the web page. They need some digital services. There is the corporate version sitting very far on the right. those are product and commodity stuff, fairly predictable and no surprises there. And there is the insurance mumbo-jumbo magic. This is how insurance companies actually develop those products. And in order to develop those products, they need to have a partnership with people who actually provide care, but they also need very precious data when to send a sick person to a proper physician or to a proper doctor. Because as I have learned, doctors have specializations, and nobody knows why some doctors are better at curing particular types of cures, but not others. And this isn't visible in their formal certification, but insurance companies know that. So if you have chosen to partner with the competitor, congratulations, you have just killed your company because you've gave them access to this data. That wasn't a good choice. So, there is the medical personnel, and on this level, we've got the market disruptor. And what we have seen during this map creation, we've seen a camp of people wanting to partner and a camp of people wanting to ignore. Why? Why they are so strong opinions in the company that they can't talk to each other? They basically start shouting and can't agree what is the right thing. And the answer is, as you've probably figured out, are bonuses. Because the thing is that if you invest in a new mobile application, you will miss the budget for the corporate line. If you don't create an app, you will not win customers in the individual market. Two different units, two different KPIs, one decision which binds them all, and unfortunately it means that one of them will be at loss. And nobody in this organization thought about what this partnership means for the entire organization. That just wasn't important. Because KPIs narrowed people's minds and thinking to the domain they were responsible for. Finger pointing, that's my favorite. Case study in a retail organization. Customer got frustrated because, we had a chance to talk to the IT director, and IT director was under fire for not delivering high quality data for business decision makers. That's not a very good place to be in, because if the high-level decision makers complain about the quality of your work, your job probably got an expiry date. And the customer did the most sensible thing, which is to blame vendor, which is us, for not delivering the services as they should be delivered. Now imagine that you are responsible for this customer and you've got two options. You stick to your guns, you believe that you are doing everything right, and that means that the customer will get upset because you are not listening to him, and you will lose them during the next contract renewal. The other option is you do what the customer wants, therefore you need to reduce your margins, therefore your boss will not be happy, and you will lose your bonus during the next financial year. Which evil do you want? Which one? How many of you will go with the first version? Oh, I can see one bold person. How many of you will choose the second one? Oh, many more people. Okay, so the map. And the map is particularly interesting, at least for me, because as DXC, I would say we are pretty brilliant at operating infrastructure for the customer. And this is the domain of the IT director. Development, operations, low-level stuff, we do lots of that. But we started thinking about why are we doing all of this? What's the business value? And we've learned very fast that it was all about loyalty data product, meaning you've got a mobile app and there are coupons displaying there, and coupons drive people to shops. And there are shareholders somewhere over there who wants to see more customers at the shop. As you can see, there are many gaps here. There is no connections because the IT department had actually no understanding of how this work translates into this one. to make the situation even worse, they have figured out that there are 7 layers of management from people who decide which coupons are necessary to drive engagement and what does it mean to the underlying infrastructure. 7 layers, right? Meaning that the moment they've got something to work, it was already too late and it was probably a wrong thing to work on. So this is, I mean, something that I have learned about people, which I don't particularly like, but I don't have a choice. If you have an organization which is struggling with anything, it's much easier for the organization to blame someone else than to accept that there is something wrong going with the organization. Right? Relatively simple. If you want to improve your internal situation, you will make internal enemies, which isn't really a good thing, and you have to embrace some sort of discomfort, and people hate it. Because jobs should be fun, jobs should be pleasant, and you shouldn't be really worried about stuff. Whereas, if you blame the vendor, you show initiative, you show that you control the situation, and it's fairly easy because the vendor cannot really push back too much. Another thing is the lack of trust, and this one probably affects many of you. It definitely affected me and even still affects me many times. Another case study, this is a public service, and they operate an application which has been continuously built over the past 50 years. Right? So those are 2 generations of software developers, no connection why it has been built this way and why it works this way. Probably nobody understands it, but the only thing that you know about this application is that it is so expensive that it needs to be rewritten. Now, of course, the platform maintenance is becoming a burden. Your options, you go with a full modernization right now, or you continue as is. I will remind you, we are talking about a critical infrastructure application, meaning that if it breaks, the entire country stops. So, how many of you will go with the modernization? Oh, plenty of you. How many of you will continue with the application as is? Some hands. By the way, those of you who said you are ready to go with it, you are quite adventurous people, right? So here is what happened. We have looked at the application. So of course, it's a public service, so they review cases. And they've got, I mean, I will quickly click to that. They've got lots of capabilities. And as you typically learn through the mapping exercise, there is a group of capabilities which is fairly mature, and it's not special to that organization at all. You know, workflows, presentation layers, document management system, you can buy those in the market. And you've got the really expensive one, which are standards, rules, logic, which is specific to the organization. So you can assume that this part can be bought from the market, and this part has to be actually written for the organization. If this can be brought from the market, it means it is usually cheaper than maintaining 50 years old system. But here is what happened in reality. There was no trust. Because even if you are an ambitious person or adventurous person and you want to modernize this sort of the application, you will hear from your key stakeholders like Prime Minister or Minister of something, no. Nobody will risk their political career in order to modernize the system. So shareholders were not ready for the rewrite, and we prepared a modernization strategy for them at this time. Unfortunately, what happened next, key change leaders left. Because when you will hear from your stakeholder that no, this project is not going to happen, people tend to look for more interesting jobs. And we got back to that organization after a few years, and you have to imagine my surprise, where I have learned that the strategy that we made at the beginning survived despite complete change of people. And what they have been working on, on the trust, only on the trust. They have changed the IT department reputation to being able to deliver changes, and stakeholders like the officials or officers which work with the application associated change with an app becoming easier to use. And this is where I have to look back to the beginning of the presentation, where we are talking about the leading organizations. Because of that, people gained confidence that the application can be rewritten, because so far, so many things improved over time. New leadership arrived, we were lucky, and by the way, you have to assume that this is a complete party change. New leaders are coming from an opposing political force than the old leaders, and modernization got back on the table and is happening this time because all of the stars are aligned. Right, so I wanted to summarize. I just want to say that the map is not the territory, and the fact that you can analyze the situation and figure out all of the practices, capabilities and components which matter is just part of the equation, because after that there comes the human factor, and humans don't always behave as you would think they will behave. Mapping theory, which you will learn at the very beginning, says focus on user needs, but here is, let's say, my little twist. Because people are not comfortable discussing all of their needs openly, right? And both ego, the comfort stuff, the bonuses, those are the things that you cannot discuss openly with people, and you have to find a different way of working with them. And the most intimate need that you cannot actually discuss openly with anyone, most of the time, are assumptions which people have about themselves. So if you've got a person who believes that being good at execution and shouting at people to get things done is a good thing and they like it, it's very unlikely that they will change and they will start nurturing people in your organization as agile coaches. If you've got a people who is praised on their analytical skills, they will rather not transform into the most social person that you can imagine, right? And this is the stuff that you cannot openly discuss, but if you cannot read it, you will not get the stuff done. So, how to spot those real challenges, that human stuff? First of all, pass the mapping test. You need to be able to create a coherent narration for your company and get approvals from all the key stakeholders that this is the right thing. This is the analytical part. This is the easy part. Those are the capabilities, every data that you have, perhaps some assumptions about customers, stuff like that. If you can do that, that's the first step. Then you need to learn how to trust people that they do the best given the circumstances. I think I had this discussion yesterday or 2 days ago. So basically you are not telling people what to do, you are giving them the right context so they can make the right decision by themselves. This involves people who report to you, but also people that you report to in order to make things happen. And I find it hilarious that the other recommendation is don't trust people because they will do what is best for them. So the assumption is that if you pass the mapping test, so you understand the reality or you think you understand the reality, if you trust the people, so you've built the context in which they should make a proper decision, but they are still not making it for whatever reason, and you can't figure out, you have just hit a mental or emotional need that is not being addressed, and this is where you need to switch the mode. Because from that moment, before we even get there, but from that moment on, you need to focus on something else. But in order to focus on something else, you need to look after yourself. If you are stressed, if you are anxious, if you are not sure whether you will have a job tomorrow, you are not able to be empathetic toward anyone else in the organization. Scarcity mindset is not your friend here. So unless you are willing to work on yourself and arrive to a mental place where you feel really good with whatever is going to happen in the organization, your job might be difficult. But if you arrive to that place, this is the moment where you should start asking yourself questions. And this is, not sure if you have seen this movie, but this is Snatch, Frankie Four Fingers, who always asks the question, what is that you know or want that I don't? Fundamental question. Most of the time it will be there without an answer, because the next thing is you need to hypothesize what people want. So executives may want certain things, directors might want other things, customers may want other things, and test without openly discussing their needs. Because as I have learned, if you ask a person about, do you really want to have a quiet work until you retire, they will not like it, yeah? Even if it's true. Right, so I have arrived to the end of the presentation. Not sure how long I have been speaking.
You still have a time.
I still have a time, I apologize. 34 minutes.
Don't worry, I have a questions.
If you want, if you enjoyed the conversation, connect with me, because I like talking to new people. This is a new change for me, right? After all of those years of analytical work. So just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk with you all, perhaps not at once, but fine. Questions?
Yeah, Krzysiek, your stories made interesting comments. So, how did you solve the conflict of interest due to the bonus issues? So, tell us the rest of the story.
Very good question. I didn't. So the thing is that, again, in mapping, and I hope Simon will take you through this, there is a concept of a North Star. And what happens on a human level, if you show them that there is a particular route, very good for the company, no sane manager or director will act against it, even if it means that the bonus will be, let's say, a little bit smaller. What will most probably happen, they will go and push back on how they are compensated, because they are sacrificing part of their budget for the good of the company, right? So this is where I got lucky, because it doesn't always work that way. You can see people torpedoing or sabotaging efforts, and unless there is a CEO willing to step in and sort things out, that's probably the end of the path. Yeah, so that's my answer.
Okay, next story and the follow-up. Any tips how you supposed to work with the stakeholders that do not trust rewriting crucial yet outdated systems underneath?
Those stakeholders, okay, so I will rephrase it, because those stakeholders, there are multiple notes in there. The main problem of those stakeholders is not whether to rewrite or not to rewrite a system. The main problem of those stakeholders is whether you are trustworthy enough to be allowed to rewrite that system. So it's a reputation problem. So if you have a stakeholder which is saying, this is too risky to rewrite this system, most likely they are saying, you are not senior enough to do that stuff, or I don't believe in you. So you have to get creative. That probably means creating additional layers which reduce the risk and hide the system. So you can intercept some of the traffic and modernize it through a facade or other patterns in such a way that the executive will think that nothing can be broken. Or if anything can be broken, it will be a very small and a very easy to replace or revert change. Right? So it's almost like a basic risk mitigation, but you can get there only if you accept that this is personal, not organizational. Yeah.
Okay, and last question, but I've got a challenge for you.
Sure.
You cannot get the answer for this question, which will be, it depends. Okay? And the question is, how often are you checking is your strategy is still the best one?
So at the beginning, I have said that whether you are getting what you want, it means that you are on the good path. And you can probably hear that I don't like this question, right? Because actually, there is a pattern in it, and it depends on the size of the organization. I will be very precise here. So if we are working with small organizations, we tend to give them tasks which are at most 6 weeks long. 6 weeks long. That means that the cadence of checking whether you are on the right path is almost like every other month, more or less. If we are working with bigger organizations, we tend to use the same cadence for really small projects at the beginning, but then over time, as we are gaining confidence that we are on the right track and that we know what we are doing, because at the beginning you just have a vague idea that you know what you are doing, we start to increase the intervals of checks, then up every quarter, every half of year, and every year.
Thank you. You made it. Please give a feedback for Krzysiek, and now it's time for applause.
Thank you.